The lights dimmed at the Sands Hotel in Las Vegas, and Dean Martin stepped onto the stage with his signature glass in hand. 20 million viewers tuned in to watch America's favorite crooner perform live on NBC. But tonight, something was different. Dean's eyes swept across the packed audience, past the celebrities and high rollers, until they locked onto an older man in a worn military jacket sitting in the back row. The man's hands trembled slightly as he clutched his glass of water. His medals caught the stage lights: Purple Heart, Bronze Star, and a faded combat infantry badge. Dean stopped mid-song. The orchestra fell silent. The audience held their breath. What happened next would become one of the most emotional moments in television history. And it all started with a simple question that changed everything. Before we dive into this incredible story, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. This is the kind of moment that reminds us why respect and honor still matter in America. Drop a comment below telling us where you're watching from, and let's get started. The year was 1967. Dean Martin was at the peak of his career. The Dean Martin Show dominated Thursday night television, pulling in millions of viewers every week. He was Hollywood royalty, smooth, charming, and seemingly untouchable. Frank Sinatra called him the king of cool. Critics praised his effortless talent. But behind the martini glass and the easy smile, Dean carried a secret that few people knew about. Dean had grown up in Steubenville, Ohio, the son of Italian immigrants. His father worked in a barbershop, and young Dino Crocetti learned early what it meant to struggle. During World War II, Dean was exempted from service due to a double hernia. But that didn't stop him from feeling the weight of those who fought. His brother was a veteran. His childhood friends had gone to war. Some came back. Many didn't. Throughout his career, Dean made it his personal mission to honor veterans whenever possible. He performed at countless USO shows, visited military hospitals without cameras present, and quietly paid medical bills for wounded soldiers. But the public rarely heard about these acts of kindness. Dean didn't do it for publicity. He did it because he believed in something bigger than himself: the veteran in the audience. The man Dean spotted that night was James Henderson, a 52-year-old Korean War veteran from Detroit. James had enlisted at 18, eager to serve his country. He'd seen combat in the Chosin Reservoir, one of the bloodiest battles in American military history, where temperatures dropped to 40 below zero and thousands of men fought against overwhelming odds. James came home with shrapnel wounds in his leg, frostbite damage to his hands, and nightmares that never really went away. He worked 2 jobs to support his wife and 3 kids, driving a taxi during the day and cleaning offices at night. Money was always tight. Medical bills from his war injuries piled up faster than he could pay them. For years, James had dreamed of seeing Dean Martin perform live. His wife, Mary, knew how much Dean's music meant to him. On their toughest nights, when the pain from his old wounds kept him awake, James would listen to Dean's records. Everybody Loves Somebody, and That's Amore, somehow made the darkness a little lighter. Mary had been saving quarters in a coffee can for 2 years. When Dean announced a special NBC broadcast from Las Vegas, she surprised James with 2 tickets. They drove 16 hours straight from Detroit, sharing peanut butter sandwiches and sleeping in their car to save money on hotels. The moment before everything changed, James sat in the back row of the Sands Hotel ballroom, wearing his only suit jacket, the same one he'd worn to his daughter's high school graduation. Underneath, he wore his old military jacket because it was the warmest thing he owned, and the desert nights got cold. His medals were pinned to his chest, not out of pride or show, but because Mary had insisted. "You earned those," she told him. "Wear them." The show had been spectacular. Dean sang, joked with the audience, and made everything look effortless. James sat there with tears in his eyes, thinking about how this one night made all the struggles worth it. This was a memory he'd carry forever. Then Dean stopped singing mid-performance. The sudden silence was jarring. The orchestra members looked at each other, confused. The audience murmured uncertainly. Dean shielded his eyes from the stage lights, peering into the back rows. Hold on," he said, his voice carrying across the room with unusual seriousness. "Someone in this audience just caught my attention. The weight of sacrifice." James Henderson's hand started shaking more noticeably as Dean Martin's gaze seemed to land directly on him. Around him, audience members began turning in their seats, trying to figure out who had captured the entertainer's attention. Mary reached over and squeezed her husband's hand. Dean stepped to the edge of the stage, still looking toward the back of the room. "Sir, in the military jacket. Would you mind standing up for me?" James froze. His heart pounded in his chest. He'd spent years trying to blend into the background, avoiding attention, never wanting to be seen as someone looking for sympathy or special treatment. The last thing he wanted was to be singled out in a room full of wealthy Vegas tourists. But Mary gently nudged him. "Stand up, honey," she whispered. "He's talking to you." Slowly, reluctantly, James rose to his feet. His legs, still damaged from frostbite and shrapnel, made standing difficult. The audience could see him now, a slender man in his early 50s, wearing a worn military jacket over a modest suit. His medals caught the light. Dean's expression changed. The easy smile faded, replaced by something deeper: recognition, respect, and what looked like genuine emotion. "Those medals on your chest, sir. Where did you serve?" James's voice was barely audible. "Korea, sir. Chosin Reservoir." A collective gasp went through the crowd. Everyone in that room knew about Chosin. It was one of the most brutal battles in American history. The newspapers had called it "Hell in a Frozen Hell." Of the 30,000 American troops who fought there, thousands were killed or wounded. Those who survived carried scars that went far deeper than any physical wound. Dean nodded slowly, his eyes never leaving James. "How long were you there?" 3 months, sir. Winter of 1950. The room fell into complete silence. You could hear the ice clinking in glasses, the soft whir of the television cameras, but not a single person spoke. The weight of what James had endured hung in the air like smoke. The story behind the medals. What the audience didn't know, what James had never told anyone except Mary, was the full story of how he'd earned those medals. During the battle at Chosin, James's unit had been surrounded by Chinese forces. Temperatures dropped to 40 degrees below zero. Men froze to death in their sleeping bags. Rifles seized up from the cold. Medical supplies ran out. Food ran out. Hope nearly ran out. On the third night of the siege, James's best friend, Tommy Rodriguez, was shot while trying to retrieve ammunition from a destroyed supply truck. Tommy lay in the snow, bleeding 50 yards from their position. The Chinese had the area covered with machine gun fire. Anyone who went after Tommy would likely die. James didn't hesitate. He crawled through the snow, bullets cutting through the air inches above his head, and dragged Tommy back to their line. Tommy survived. James took shrapnel in his leg and severe frostbite to both hands. He spent 6 months in military hospitals before being sent home with medals he never felt he deserved. "Tommy was the hero," James would tell Mary years later. "I was just the guy who couldn't leave him behind." The hidden struggles of coming home. After the war, James came home to a country that had already moved on. Korea wasn't like World War II. There were no parades, no celebrations, no national outpouring of gratitude. Veterans came home quietly, found jobs if they were lucky, and tried to forget the things they'd seen. James struggled with what we now call PTSD, though back then people just called it nerves or being shell-shocked. Loud noises made him jump. Crowds made him anxious. He couldn't sleep more than 3 or 4 hours a night without waking up in a cold sweat, back in the frozen mountains of Korea, hearing the screams of wounded men. The medical bills were crushing. The VA helped, but not enough. The shrapnel in his leg caused chronic pain and infections that required multiple surgeries. The frostbite damage to his hands meant he couldn't do the skilled factory work that paid better wages. So he drove a taxi where his damaged hands could still work the steering wheel, and cleaned offices at night when his bad leg wasn't hurting too much. His daughters needed school clothes. His son wanted to play Little League, but the registration fee was $35 they didn't have. Mary worked part-time at a diner, but her wages barely covered groceries. They fell behind on rent twice. Their car broke down constantly. Every month was a careful calculation of which bills could wait and which couldn't. Through it all, James never complained. He'd seen men die in Korea who never got a chance to come home, never got to hold their children or kiss their wives. He figured he was lucky, all things considered. He had his family. He had his life, even if it wasn't the life he'd once dreamed of. The Vegas dream almost didn't happen. Mary had saved for 2 years to afford this trip. Every quarter that didn't go to bills went into that coffee can. When she finally had enough for 2 tickets to Dean Martin's show, she nearly spent the money on their son's emergency dental work instead. But their neighbor, an older woman who'd lost her own husband in World War II, convinced Mary to go. "James needs this," she'd said. "He's given up everything for this country and for you kids. Let him have one night where he feels like a regular person again, not just a veteran struggling to get by." So they'd made the drive from Detroit to Las Vegas, 16 hours of highway through 4 states. They ate peanut butter sandwiches and slept in their 1959 Chevrolet in rest stop parking lots. James's leg throbbed the entire drive, but he never said a word about the pain. Now here he was, standing in front of 20 million television viewers and a room full of strangers, with Dean Martin looking directly at him. The attention felt overwhelming. James wanted to sit back down, disappear into the crowd, go back to being invisible. But Dean wasn't done with him yet. The moment that changed everything. Dean Martin set down his glass, his famous prop that had become as much a part of his image as his voice, and walked to the very edge of the stage. The television cameras swung to follow him. 20 million Americans leaned closer to their screens. "Sir, what's your name?" Dean's voice was gentle but firm, the kind of voice that demanded an answer not through authority, but through genuine care. "James Henderson, sir." "James, I need you to do something for me. I need you to come up here on this stage." A murmur rippled through the crowd. This wasn't part of the show. The producers in the control booth were frantically signaling to keep the cameras rolling. This was live television and anything could happen. James shook his head, his face flushing with embarrassment. "Oh no, sir. I'm fine right here. I don't need." "I'm not asking, James. I'm insisting." Dean's tone left no room for argument, but there was warmth in it. "You came all this way. The least I can do is shake your hand properly." Mary squeezed her husband's arm. "Go," she whispered, tears already forming in her eyes. "Go up there." The audience began to applaud, softly at first, then building into a wave of encouragement. James had no choice. He made his way down the aisle, his limp more pronounced with each step, his hands trembling. When he reached the stage, Dean reached down and helped pull him up. The moment their hands clasped, something shifted in the room. This wasn't a celebrity meeting of fan. This was one man acknowledging another man's sacrifice. Dean kept holding James's hand, looking him directly in the eyes. "Chosen Reservoir. Winter of 1950. You boys went through hell, didn't you?" James's voice cracked. "Yes, sir. We did. And you came home to what? Parades? Celebrations?" James shook his head. "No, sir. We came home to... Well, we just came home. Found jobs. Tried to move on." Dean nodded slowly, and those watching at home could see his jaw tighten with emotion. "That's what I thought. That's what makes me angry, James. You gave everything for this country, and the country just moved on like it never happened." The gesture that made 20 million cry. Dean turned to face the audience, still holding James's hand. "Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to understand something. This man standing next to me survived one of the most brutal battles in American history. He fought in temperatures that would kill most of us in hours. He watched friends die. He carried wounds home that he'll live with for the rest of his life." The room was completely silent except for the sound of people crying. "And after all that," Dean continued, his voice thick with emotion, "he came home and drove a taxi. He worked 2 jobs. He raised a family. He never asked for anything special. He just lived, like millions of other veterans who did the impossible, and then came home to silence." Dean looked at James again. "What you and your brothers did in Korea, it mattered. You saved South Korea from falling to communism. You held the line when everything looked hopeless. And America needs to know that. America needs to remember that." Then Dean did something unexpected. He turned to the orchestra conductor. "Maestro, I need you to play something for me. James, I'm going to sing this next song for you. But more importantly, I'm singing it for every veteran who came home to silence. Every man and woman who served and never got thanked properly." The opening notes of "You'll Never Walk Alone" filled the ballroom. It was a song about hope, about perseverance, about knowing that even in your darkest moments, you're not alone. As Dean sang, His voice carried every ounce of emotion he'd been holding back. This wasn't a performance. This was a message. James stood there on stage, tears streaming down his face, unable to speak. In the audience, Mary was sobbing. Around her, hundreds of other audience members were crying too. In living rooms across America, 20 million viewers watched through their own tears. When the song ended, Dean embraced James. Not a Hollywood hug for the cameras, but a real embrace, the kind of hug that says, "I see you. I recognize what you've been through. You matter." The audience erupted in applause that lasted nearly 5 minutes. People stood. They cheered. They cried. The NBC cameras captured every second. The reveal as the applause finally began to die down, Dean held up his hand for silence. "James, I need to tell you something. When my team found out you were going to be here tonight, and yes, we knew your wife Mary sent us a letter, I made some calls." James looked confused. Dean smiled. "I called some friends of mine. Frank Sinatra, Sammy Davis Jr., a few others who understand what it means to serve. We took up a collection." He pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket. "This isn't charity. This isn't pity. This is a thank you from people who should have said thank you a long time ago." Dean handed James the envelope. "There's $25,000 in there. It's yours. Pay off your medical bills. Take Mary on a real vacation. Do something nice for those kids of yours. And every time you use that money, I want you to remember, America hasn't forgotten you." James nearly collapsed. Dean caught him, held him steady. The audience was on its feet again. Applause mixing with sobs of joy and gratitude. 20 million Americans watched a moment of pure, unscripted humanity unfold on live television. The aftermath. The footage of Dean Martin and James Henderson became one of the most replayed moments in television history. NBC received over 100,000 letters in the following weeks, most from veterans or their families, thanking Dean for what he'd done. James and Mary used the money exactly as Dean suggested. They paid off 8 years of accumulated medical debt. They bought their kids new school clothes and paid for their son to join Little League. They took a week-long vacation, their first in 20 years of marriage, to the Grand Canyon. But the real impact went far deeper than one family. Dean's gesture sparked a national conversation about how America treated its veterans. Newspapers ran editorials. Politicians gave speeches. The Veterans Administration saw an increase in funding requests. Most importantly, ordinary Americans started paying attention to the veterans in their own communities. James lived another 32 years, passing away in 1999 at the age of 84. At his funeral, his children talked about that night in Las Vegas as the moment their father finally believed he mattered. The moment he understood that his sacrifice hadn't been forgotten after all. The lesson Dean taught us. Dean Martin could have simply shaken James's hand and moved on with the show. He could have offered polite applause and a kind word. Instead, he stopped everything. His show, his carefully planned performance, his professional obligations, to honor a man the world had overlooked. The lesson is simple but profound. Real respect requires action, not just words. It's easy to say thank you for your service and move on. It's harder to stop what you're doing, look someone in the eye, and acknowledge their sacrifice in a meaningful way. Dean understood that veterans didn't need sympathy. They needed recognition. They needed to know their suffering had meaning. This lesson applies to all of us, whether we're talking about veterans, teachers, healthcare workers, or anyone who sacrifices for others. Recognition costs us nothing but time and attention, yet it can change someone's entire life. Why this story still matters today. In 2025, we still have veterans coming home from deployments to a country that quickly moves on. We still have men and women carrying physical and emotional scars from their service. And we still have a responsibility to recognize their sacrifice. Dean Martin's gesture reminds us that one person can make a difference. You don't need to be a celebrity to honor someone's service. You can volunteer at a VA hospital. You can hire a veteran. You can simply take the time to listen to their story. The greatest gift we can give to those who've sacrificed for us is the gift of remembrance. The gift of acknowledgement. The gift of saying with our actions and not just our words, you matter. What you did matters. And we will never forget. Your turn. If this story touched your heart, smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this message. And take a moment today to thank a veteran. Not just with words, but with genuine attention and respect. In the comments below, tell us, have you ever witnessed a moment of kindness that restored your faith in humanity? Share your story. Your words might inspire someone else to act. Dean Martin taught us that the greatest performance isn't on a stage. It's in the way we treat those who've given everything for us. Let's honor that lesson. Let's remember James Henderson and the millions like him. And let's make sure that no veteran ever feels forgotten again. If you like this story, check out our next video about another incredible moment of recognition that changed lives. See you there.